Hello and welcome to Insurance Business TV for our second cyber panel looking at the cyber insurance market in Australia. We've assembled our panel of experts. Anthony Smit is cyber risk and insurance consultant for WTW based in Sydney, and Michael Parrant is director and cyber insurance practice leader for Aon. He's in Melbourne. Welcome to you both. And first of all, let's start with you, Michael, and I'll officially welcome you back to the panel again. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Daniel. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. The cyber market, it's no secret that many see it as soft right now, but I mean, how soft is it, and what do you think's changed since last time we spoke?
Yeah, great question. So, upon reflection, it does feel like we're back to, say, the circa 2021 rates from insurance, give or take. Obviously, each client will be at one end of that spectrum, but we do feel it's around that 2021 rate, which was the earlier stages of the rate increases here in Australia. So, interestingly, if we compare that to D&O, we see that there's a bit of a linear movement on D&O insurance rates, typically trending down. I think it's very fair to say that cyber is going to be more volatile. So we'll probably follow a non-linear path as time goes by when it comes to cyber. I think we're on that downward trajectory, and I think it's probably fair to say it's an acute downward trajectory. I do have some concerns that it will be an equally non-linear increase at some point in time. Really interestingly, a fun fact for everyone, I looked at our claims of the claims that we've had, and we've had now quite a few claims of a particular subset of the market. I'm starting to see the biggest losses are now all aggregating. 9 out of 10 of them are aggregating in the last 3 years. So that kind of leads me to believe that the claims are actually getting worse from a severity perspective. I think it's going to be just a matter of time before we see things change. So interesting times ahead, I think.
Thanks, Michael. And Anthony, welcome to the panel. And how are you seeing things? What's the softness like from your perspective?
From out, I mean, the market stability, it's stable, I think, through 24 into 25. We're seeing a lot of renewals, decreasing 10%, up to 10%. And, but it really depends on, I suppose, their cyber profile, their security posture. And I think one of the key things is underwriters are eager and under pressure to at least retain some of the business. So, we're seeing they ignore some of the client's revenue on proviso that there's no significant sort of change in the offer or service. The other part which I want to mention was also capacity on the excess layers. So there's a lot of action there at this point in time, and they're looking. They can provide a lot more flexibility, a lot more excess capacity across the program. And it's interesting though, because not a fun fact, but something I did read, similar to Michael, is that someone said that insurance is relatively expensive, and cyber today is considered a discretionary spend. So that in these turbulent times, companies are not looking to increase their discretionary spend. So what does that mean? Is that the competition in the cyber market for that premium dollar is fierce and driving the softness. So it's differing sort of reasons, and at the end of the day, cyber insurance is not a huge market or similar to P&C. So.
Let's stick with you, Anthony. You've mentioned a couple of the drivers, the excess capacity being one of them. I mean, what else is going on in the cyber market and driving this softness, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, any sort of softness is broadly a factor of a claims ratio. So the claims ratios are coming down and the premium is growing. I read an article in Munich, or I read the Munich Re article whereby they say that, the premiums of last year, which was around 15.5 billion US, are going to double by 2020. So, on the flip side, you've got organizations a lot more risk averse and investing in cybersecurity controls. So there's a maturation of the risk management environment of organizations. But from the insurer's point of view, I think, they're shifting priorities. They're a lot more aggressive in looking for premium and top line growth. They become a lot more sophisticated. We see, the analytics and technology and their tools coming to the fore as, when we discuss renewal terms and when they look at clients. And I think the final one I just wanted to mention was the reinsurance markets. They are a lot more stable, performing well. But the key part of that is the non-insurance. We see the non-insurance type of capital that's moving into it. And they're just looking for risk and return across a spectrum versus, the age-old sort of you invest, like an investor in Lloyd's. They were interested in investing to insure risk. So it's quite a different dollar looking for the insurance.
Michael, what about you? How are you seeing the drivers? A different dollar looking for insurance?
It's certainly a factor. I think as Anthony's hit a lot of nails there. One other to really call out though is I think it's the maturity of the both insurers and the clients or organizations when it comes to cyber uplift. So again, we go back in time when the hard market kicked in. Insurers demanded an uplift of security. It was uncompromising. I think a lot of clients heard that, have implemented those controls at about the same time, plus a year. Insurers increasing their rates, it became really attractive for either non-participants or existing participants that had maybe reduced their engagement to relax those rules and start to recoup because the security environment looked good. And let's also be really, I suppose, clear that the claims didn't quite manifest as bad as it could have. So I think the rates were based off the known losses plus anticipating the existing losses. They didn't quite materialize. And then everything that Anthony said there holds true as well. Those markets saw those as attractive rates. Again, apart from the new capacity that Anthony talks about, existing capacity isn't really growing. It's moving from one non-performing line to another improving line or performing line. And cyber was seen as that. So you might have seen a shift away from, say, additional, say, as an example, D&O capacity into the cyberspace. But that insurer ultimately has the same amount of capacity that they're offering on all lines. It's just that redeployment to what is more attractive and more performing at that point in time.
What about cyber attack news? Michael, you probably got your finger on the pulse there. Has anything struck you? And if so, why?
There's probably two to call out. One was literally a colleague who was here this morning showing me the one of them. So two that really stand out. You'll remember, so you may recall, maybe known I think it was South Korean or Hong Kong fake CEO attack. It's not an attack per se, but it's a social engineering form where $20 million worth of income was misappropriated. Um, I, I've seen that now here in Australia for at least one small entity. That implies to me that very complex, and by complex I mean computationally expensive attack, because AI was utilized, it was highly targeted. That's becoming more commoditized, so it's more readily available to criminals to mass produce these sorts of things because the entity that was impacted was quite small and the amount they were trying to steal was quite small. So that implies to me that sort of very complex attack, very difficult to defend against, is resulting in potentially losses. So that's, I think, a standout. Again, it's not a cyber attack; it's more a social engineering, but it's something to really, really watch out for. And on that vein, again, not a cyber attack, but the one I heard this morning, colleague showed me an email a client of his had received around a rebate of an insurance premium to a client. The email looks 100% legitimate. There's no way to identify that. The only reason it rang a bell for the client was that they don't actually insure with that insurer for that line of insurance. But it was incredibly complex from its development. So I think those sorts of social engineering attacks, all driven by the upshift in AI and better technologies, is going to propagate across the Australian environment at pace.
Yeah. What about you, Anthony? What have you been noticing in cyber attack news?
Um, There was an interesting comment from one of the largest cyber insurers the other day, and they were quite skeptical about the soft market. So they were saying the frequency of claims have decreased, but they were cautious because of the high risk of some of the cyber threats and what they call the shape of the market. So they were alluding to Change Healthcare and Delta of last year, large cyber incidents, right? But they didn't really pose a threat to insurers and their profitability. And then, I was reading that, then I saw this headline and it said, UK cyber attacks drive surge in retail sector insurance premiums. And I'm going, well, what? What's this? So reading a little bit and then digging, and that was literally 2-3 weeks ago, is Marks and Spencer, who had a large cyber breach, and I think it's over 20 million customer records, and it's affected their online sales. So unlike Change and Delta, they do have cyber insurance, and they're already preempting that this potentially could move the dial. So from a cyber insurance or from a premium perspective, when you're talking about softness, let's wait and see. Other retailers were, if I remember correctly, Harrods and Co-op. So locally, come to think of it, we haven't really escaped. We had Western Sydney University, Hertz, and then the rest and Australian Super. So I think it's the shape of the market. We talk about softness, stability, but I think slowly but surely, as more companies take up insurance, the market will probably move a little bit higher, or at least not be as soft as we think.
Yeah, there does seem to be a bit of a, I guess, a contradiction between the softness, but we're still getting claims. So yeah, it'd be interesting what happens. Anthony, let's stick with you. Are you able to characterize the sorts of claims you've been seeing in your work over the last few months?
Yeah, I was thinking about this, and I think it's same old, really, but with a key difference. And this is where threat actors are increasing with their sophistication because of the tools and methods. So the top three still would be business email compromise, or BSCs, data breach / ransomware type thing, and then supply chain vulnerabilities. So with BSCs, the AI-powered phishing attacks are massive. And with AI, you can now, I suppose, analyze vast amounts of data or craft sort of highly personalized phishing messages. I mean, Michael just mentioned earlier that, it's almost no ways you could have seen that it was a phishing email, except if you actually look back and say, well, this has got nothing to do with us from an insurance perspective. So the sophistication is almost indistinguishable from the genuine article. Credential stuffing is another key driver. And I wrote it down here. The Munich Re report, which actually stated that the exploitation of data leaks increased 8-fold in 2024. So that's approximately 5.5 billion accounts compromised. I mean, we start now, we're talking about huge numbers, and we realize how important AI, or how AI can be used to obviously, exfiltrate and propagate this sort of, threat. And then I think the third one is really third-party vendors. Our reliance on cloud service providers, third-party vendors, SaaS applications is huge. And it's significant where the claims are coming from, and it's moving more and more to your third-party vendors. And it's all important now from a security point of view, and insurers looking and asking questions as to how do you manage your third-party vendors? What questions do you ask? So I think those are the sort of three key areas that we're seeing claims in.
And Michael, what about you? You mentioned that pretty sophisticated email. What are the key areas in claims for you at the moment?
Yeah, so again, everything Anthony said there is certainly true. Nothing is new. Everything is just old, but with the adoption of new technologies to make it more complex, more problematic. And for us, what we're seeing is ransomware attacks. But the severity is increasing. The frequency, not so much, but the severity seems to be increasing. The demands are increasing. And that's probably because organizations or criminals are using AI to better increase their attacks. The dwell time is decreasing, i.e., the criminals are in quicker, extracting data quicker, and able to extort quicker. And that's leaving organization and demanding a faster response. And that's leaving organizations in a more challenging environment than they were this time last year. And unfortunately, some metrics are suggesting that the percentage of organizations that are paying the demands is increasing because of the severity of those attacks. So that's something to watch, I think, to keep your eyes out on. I don't see it getting any better, but again, echoing Anthony's point, nothing's new. Well, very few of these attacks are new and novel. It's all just a rehashing of that which existed before. Supply chain is the big changer. When they go wrong, I think that that's going to cause massive problems. And that, again, to echo comments, individual attacks in individual incidents aren't likely to change the market. It's those systemic events that are likely to change the market.
Michael, let's stick with you for our final question. What do you see as a broker? What do you see as your main challenges in the months ahead?
Yes, from my point of view, I think a lot of work has been done by organizations to understand their cyber risks and their insurance policies. So I think that that's great. I think there's still a lot to go for many organizations across the board getting that right, and ensuring appropriate cover limits and structures, that suit their particular holistic needs. So that's not just cyber. That's broadly speaking other lines of insurance. Really digging into the exposures the client faces and aligning their risks to their insurance program more broadly. So that's still a piece of work that I think all organizations need to do. Increasingly, cyber is going to fill a bigger role for many, but it's about making sure you understand which policy responds to which event, and then aligning the policies to meet that particular need.
Anthony, what about you? What are your challenges in the broking world?
I think there's probably two, and it's really around the continued expansion of the regulatory environment. So we saw last year was a landmark year when it came to the security law and regulations in Oz. We had the Privacy Act reform, Cybersecurity Bill, the Security of Critical Infrastructure Digital Act, and then you had ASIC and OAC regulatory enforcements. So these changes, I think, will increase the business exposure to regulatory scrutiny, which will then have an impact on the policy and consider what their policies cover, so the level of cover. We need to be quite clear as to what the exclusions are. And, in a soft market, this creates a challenge which may not be sustainable. And the other one that I wanted to, and I alluded to earlier, is the AI risk. We said the landscape of cyber threats is rapidly evolving with the advancement of AI tech. So sometimes, the off-the-shelf cyber insurance policy is inadequate. It doesn't take into account the unique risks that AI brings. And I just wanted to bring an example where from a non-breach privacy claim, which there were a couple in the US, which underscore the need for companies to review their data practices and ensure they obtain consent from users before sharing it. So it's all about the data. It's all about how they use it in their models, and then applying that to the cyber policy. And I think that's one of the key challenges in understanding the client's environment and making sure that the policy is fit for purpose, or negotiating with insurers to provide certain extensions taking into account the environment.
Well, thank you, Anthony, for your insights, and thanks, Michael, too. And we'll leave our power panel there, and that wraps up our cyber power panel for Australia. Thanks for watching Insurance Business TV. Bye for now.